On my last day as a surgeon. A fresh graduate smiled and said, "We'll fix all your old mistakes." The hospital chief laughed. I handed over the keys. But that night, the OR faced a complication only I knew how to solve, and they had to. It was my final shift at St. Vincent's Hospital in Asheville, North Carolina. After 37 years as a general surgeon, I was ready to retire. My hands had done thousands of procedures. Some routine, some life-saving, some that still woke me up in the middle of the night. But my time was up. That day, they threw a small farewell in the break room. People clapped, said kind things. I shook hands, smiled politely, and tried to hide the mix of relief and sadness building in my chest. Ethan Riley, a fresh-faced surgical resident, lingered nearby. When it was time for me to leave, I handed over my office keys to Dr. Lang, the hospital chief. Ethan grinned wide, arms crossed, and said, "We'll fix all your old mistakes." Lang chuckled, nodding like it was harmless. Maybe it was to them. I just gave a tight nod, didn't say a word. I'd seen a lot of young doctors with big egos over the years, but something about Ethan's smugness rubbed me raw. That night, I sat on my back porch, sipping coffee, looking out at the mountains, wondering what retirement would feel like. Then my phone buzzed. It was Brenda, one of the senior OR nurses. Her voice was shaking. "Dr. Reynolds, it's Harris, he's coding. Internal bleeding. Ethan's leading the surgery, but it's bad. He doesn't know what to do. He won't listen. We need you." I rubbed my face. "Brenda, I'm not staff anymore. Please document. You're the only one who's ever handled this kind of case. We can't stop the bleeding." I closed my eyes for a second. The old case flooded back, an anomaly in the hepatic artery. A rare condition I'd only seen once in my entire career. I'd written a paper on it years ago, but no one had read it. "I'll be there in 10 minutes. When I walked into the OR, the place was chaos. The monitors were screaming. Blood was pooling on the floor. Ethan was standing there, frozen, pale as a sheet, staring at the mess. "What the hell happened?" I snapped, gloving up. I thought it was a standard resection," Ethan stammered. "Step aside," I said. I took over. "Clamp here." "No, not there, there." "Retract that." "Suction." My voice cut through the panic like a scalpel. I moved fast, controlled. Found the source, just like I remembered. Clamped the aberrant artery. The bleeding slowed, then stopped. It took 42 minutes, but we stabilized the patient. When it was over, Ethan just stood there, staring at the floor. "You think this is easy?" I growled. "You think you know it all because you read some papers? You don't know a damn thing." He didn't argue. Just nodded, eyes glassy. Next morning, I was called into Lang's office. Ethan sat there, still looking shell-shocked. Lang folded her hands on the desk. "Thank you for coming in last night, Dr. Reynolds. We owe you." I nodded but didn't smile. Ethan spoke up, voice low. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have been so arrogant." I stared at him, let the silence hang heavy. Finally I said, "Arrogance will kill patients. You were lucky last night. Don't count on luck again." He nodded slowly. Weeks passed. I kept getting calls. Small things at first. "Dr. Reynolds, can you take a look at this case? Can you review this chart?" Ethan kept getting in over his head, but instead of asking for help, he tried to cover it up. Patients were getting hurt. I started digging. Quietly reviewed the charts he'd signed off on. Found errors, small at first, then worse. Missed infections. Wrong dosages. Surgical notes that didn't match the outcomes. I reported it to Lang. She looked at me like I'd punched her in the gut. "Are you sure?" "Positive," I said. Lang set up a meeting with Ethan. I sat across from him. He wouldn't meet my eyes. I didn't want to look incompetent. He muttered. I leaned forward, voice low. Covering mistakes makes you a danger to every patient who comes through these doors. He clenched his jaw, said nothing. Lang sighed. Dr. Riley, you're suspended pending investigation. I thought that was it. Ethan would get disciplined, maybe fired. But a few days later, I got a call from a lawyer. Ethan had filed a complaint against me. Said I created a hostile environment. That I humiliated him in front of staff, undermined him, damaged his career. It turned into a mess. The hospital launched an internal review. I was dragged into endless meetings, forced to defend my actions. I felt betrayed. Lang's tone shifted, less supportive, more cautious. We have to protect the institution, Dr. Reynolds, she said. A week later, I got an anonymous email. Check the surgery footage from April 12th. Or for a friend. I followed the tip. What I found made my blood run cold. A video, Ethan in the OR before a surgery, swapping out a vial of antibiotics for saline. The patient developed sepsis post-op. It wasn't a mistake. It was deliberate. I realized he wasn't just arrogant. He was dangerous. And he had enemies. That video haunted me. I couldn't stop thinking about it. Ethan tampering with medication. It wasn't just negligence. It wasn't a mistake. It was intentional harm. I couldn't just sit on this. I went straight to Lang's office, laptop in hand. I laid it on her desk, played the footage. The sound of the OR, metal clinks, hushed voices, the monitor beeping, filled the room. Lang sat still, eyes narrowing. When it ended, she didn't say anything for a long time. Finally, she looked at me and said, "We'll handle this internally." That's when it hit me. She wasn't surprised. I leaned back, heart thudding. How long have you known? Lang didn't flinch. He's a rising star, Reynolds. His research brings in grants. He's spoken at national conferences. Do you have any idea how much money he's worth to this hospital? I stared at her, disbelief turning into cold fury. You're covering for him. She shrugged, like it wasn't personal. This isn't about you. It's about the institution. I felt like the floor dropped out from under me. The next day, I started getting texts. Blocked numbers. Threats. Walk away, old man. Mind your business. Retirement looks good on you. Keep it that way. I knew it had to be Ethan, or someone working with him. Lang must have warned him I was digging. But I couldn't walk away. Not after what I saw. Not when patients were at risk. So I started gathering everything I could, case files, emails, or footage. I even reached out to an old contact, Sandra, who worked in the hospital's compliance department. She agreed to meet at a diner off I-26. I showed her what I had. Her face went pale. Jesus, Reynolds. This isn't just malpractice. This is criminal. I nodded. And they're covering for him. She sighed, looking around nervously. I'll help you. But we have to be careful. Lang has friends everywhere. Sandra and I set up a sting. We planted a fake surgery case in the system, an elderly patient with a rare heart condition. We flagged the file, then waited to see if Ethan would alter it. Sure enough, 2 days later, Sandra caught Ethan accessing the file, changing the dosage orders. We had him. But then, Sandra stopped answering my calls. I went to her office. Her desk was cleared out. No one had seen her. I called her apartment. No answer. It felt like she'd been erased. That night, I heard a noise outside my house. Went to the window, saw a dark car idling across the street. Headlights off. I knew it wasn't just paranoia. They were watching me. A brick crashed through my front window around 2 a.m. No note, just glass everywhere. I filed a police report, but nothing happened. 2 days later, I got an email. Final warning, back off, or you're next. Attached was a photo. My daughter, Jamie, leaving her apartment, holding groceries. I felt the blood drain from my face. My hands shook. This wasn't just a career dispute anymore. This was war. I called Jamie. Told her to stay at a friend's house for a while. I told her it was just a precaution, but she could hear the fear in my voice. I knew I had to act fast. I reached out to an old friend, Mike Peterson, a lawyer I'd worked with on a malpractice case years ago. Mike had a reputation for being a bulldog, and I needed someone like that now. "Mike, I need to go scorched earth," I said. He listened as I laid it all out, the cover-up, the tampering, the threats. When I finished, he said, "You have a case. But we'll need more hard evidence, witnesses willing to testify, and a hell of a lot of guts." I said, "I'm in." The next morning, I got a certified letter. The hospital was suing me. Defamation? Breach of contract. They were trying to crush me before I could go public. I knew I had to fight back. But I also knew, if I didn't move carefully, they'd ruin me. And worse, they might go after Jamie. I wasn't going to let that happen. Not on my watch. I wasn't going to let them bury the truth. Mike helped me draft a demand letter, formal, aggressive, and threatening a full-blown whistleblower lawsuit. But I knew that wasn't enough. They had power, lawyers, money. They could drag it out for years, ruin my life in the process. I needed something that would end it all fast. So I went for the jugular. I reached out to an investigative journalist I knew from years back, Rachel Greer. She worked for a national health watchdog group and had a reputation for going after hospitals like a shark smelling blood. I sent her everything: the tampering video, the altered files, the emails from Lang, the threats. Rachel called me that night. "This is huge, Reynolds. If you're sure about going public, I can break this wide open." I was sure. The story hit the news like a bomb. Surgeon exposes deadly cover-up at St. Vincent's Hospital. The footage of Ethan swapping the antibiotics played on every major news network. Interviews with former patients who had suffered under his care flooded in. Lang's statement to the press was cold, denying responsibility. But it was too late. Within days, the state medical board suspended Ethan's license. The FBI launched an investigation into potential Medicare fraud and criminal negligence. Lang was forced to resign when it came out that she had covered up multiple incidents involving Ethan. And then, a family came forward. A young woman named Maria lost her mother during a routine gallbladder surgery Ethan had performed. She was only 42. The family had been told it was a freak complication. Now they knew the truth. They filed a wrongful death lawsuit against the hospital. Others followed. It became a class action case. Lang and Ethan were both named in the suits. But it wasn't over. One night, around 1 a.m., my phone rang. It was Ethan. His voice was hoarse, desperate. "You ruined my life," he said. I was calm. "You did that yourself. You don't understand. They made me do it. Lang, she pressured me. They promised me a fast track to chief surgeon if I covered up those errors. I didn't mean for anyone to get hurt." I let the silence hang, then said, "You still let it happen. And now you're going to pay for it." He hung up. A week later, Ethan was arrested, charged with multiple counts of medical fraud and reckless endangerment. They found financial records showing he'd received kickbacks from a medical device company to push unnecessary surgeries. Lang was next. The feds raided her home. They uncovered forged documents, hidden bank accounts. She was indicted for obstruction of justice and conspiracy. Even the hospital board wasn't safe. The CEO resigned in disgrace. Half the board was replaced. The hospital lost accreditation temporarily. They paid millions in settlements. And Sandra, she came back. Turns out, she'd been forced into hiding after Lang threatened her family. When the FBI took over, she testified as a key witness. She and I stayed in touch. I wasn't unscathed. The stress took a toll. I lost weight, lost sleep, lost friends. But I kept my integrity. I testified at Ethan's trial. looked him straight in the eye as I told the jury how he had gambled with lives to build his career. He was convicted. Sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. Lang got 12. I watched them get led away in cuffs. It wasn't just satisfaction, it was justice. After it all settled, the hospital board asked me if I'd consider coming back as a consultant. I laughed. Said no. I was done with hospitals. But I wasn't done making sure stories like this never got buried again. So I started working with Rachel. Together, we built a network for whistleblowers in the medical field, giving them the tools, protection, and voice they needed. Because the system doesn't change on its own. Sometimes you have to burn it down to rebuild it right. And I had no regrets. Not a single one. After the news story blew up, the entire hospital went into crisis mode. St. Vincent's was on the front page of every paper in North Carolina. Doctor exposes deadly cover-up, St. Vincent's in freefall. I watched it unfold from my living room, sipping black coffee, the news anchors struggling to keep up with the chaos, multiple patient families filing lawsuits. The state medical board launching an emergency review of all surgeries done by Ethan in the last 2 years. The health department starting an investigation into hospital-wide failures. But it wasn't enough for me. I wanted them all to feel what they had done, to me, to the patients, to the families. So I took it further. I leaked every document I had, emails, internal memos, patient files showing botched surgeries, altered records, even Lang's private email where she ordered the cover-up. The media had a field day. Lang's resignation wasn't enough. The DA opened a criminal case, manslaughter. She was arrested on live TV, cuffed in front of the hospital she thought she controlled. Ethan tried to lay low, but it didn't matter. The FBI showed up at his apartment at 3 a.m. They found cash hidden in his freezer, burner phones, and a hard drive full of patient files he shouldn't have had. He went down for wire fraud, reckless endangerment, and conspiracy to commit medical fraud. 15 years, no parole. But karma didn't stop with them. The board members who had known and said nothing? Exposed. Some resigned in shame, others were fired outright. A few had dirty money trails of their own. Contracts with shady medical device companies, investments in private clinics that fed off St. Vincent's referrals. They were named in the lawsuits, forced to sell their homes to cover settlements. One of them, Gordon Slate, his wife left him, took the kids, moved to Florida. Another, Janice Harper, was disbarred after the investigation uncovered tax fraud tied to the hospital shell companies. The final nail? Ethan's girlfriend came forward with a recording. It was from a night they'd argued. Ethan, drunk, bragging about how he'd covered his tracks after botching surgeries. How he'd let a few slip away because it helped the numbers. It played in court, in front of victims' families. I was there. Ethan tried to explain, stammering about pressure, expectations, the system. No one cared. When the verdict was read, guilty on all counts, he collapsed in his seat, sobbing. As he was led away, I stood up. He saw me. I held his gaze steady, unflinching. He mouthed something I couldn't hear, but I didn't care. He was finished. I could have walked away then, but I wasn't done. I used my retirement payout to fund a legal clinic, one that helps families fight back against medical negligence. I named it after Maria Ortiz, the woman who died in Ethan's OR. Her family cried when I told them. The clinic got so much attention, they started featuring it in news stories about medical reform. Other whistleblowers reached out. Nurses, techs, even other surgeons. They'd seen things. They wanted to speak up. It wasn't just about Ethan anymore. It was about burning down the whole system of cover-ups, greed, and arrogance that had festered for years. And every time I walked past St. Vincent's, I made sure to stop, look up at that building, and remind myself, I wasn't the one who destroyed that hospital. They did. I just made sure the world saw it happen. I thought I'd seen it all. I thought the arrests, the lawsuits, the headlines would be enough. But it wasn't. 2 weeks after Ethan went to prison, I got a call from Jamie, my daughter. "Dad, there's a man watching my building again." I froze. My stomach turned cold. It was happening again. I wasn't going to play defense anymore. I drove straight to St. Vincent's, right to Lang's office, where she was still packing up her things under the pretense of a retirement. She looked up, calm, like she still had the upper hand. "I told you to back off," she said. "You should have walked away when you had the chance." I pulled out my phone and played a recording, Ethan's voice, slurred, rambling about how Lang ordered the cover-up. How she pressured him to falsify records, how they silenced complaints. Lang's face went pale. "I've already sent this to the DA, the press, and the state board," I told her. Her jaw tightened. "You're going to burn everything down." I didn't blink. "No, you did. I'm just lighting the match." The next day, federal agents raided Lang's house. They found offshore accounts, laundered money, and emails tying her to multiple deaths. But the real bombshell? They found a list, names of hospital staff who were paid off to look the other way. Lang had been running a kickback scheme for years, taking payouts from medical device companies, falsifying outcomes, burying malpractice claims. Over 20 people were named. Doctors. Board members. Even a few in HR. Every single one of them went down. It wasn't just a scandal anymore. It was a full-blown RICO case. But they weren't done coming after me. Lang's legal team filed a countersuit, slander, harassment, emotional distress. They tried to ruin me financially. I fought it. Hard. Mike stood by me, pro bono. But it was brutal, years of legal battles, depositions, threats. I lost my savings. Almost lost my house. Jamie had to move across the country to feel safe. I paid a price. A big one. But I'd do it again. Because every time I thought about those families, the kids who lost parents, the mothers who died in childbirth because of Ethan's greed, I knew the cost was worth it. Years later, after the dust settled, I got a letter. It was from Ethan. A crumpled piece of paper, messy handwriting from prison. "I hope you're happy," he wrote. "You destroyed my life." I folded it up, tossed it in the fire. But I couldn't forget what came next. Ethan didn't last in prison. He was found dead in his cell. Stabbed in the back over a debt he couldn't pay. Lang? Her trial ended with a guilty verdict on every count. The judge didn't hold back. "Your actions cost lives. You corrupted an entire system for personal gain. You are the definition of criminal negligence." Lang wept as the sentence was read, 30 years. I wasn't the hero in this story. I lost friends, respect, money. I lost the comfort of a quiet retirement. But I won the war. I exposed them. I made sure they couldn't hurt anyone else. And in the end, the whole rotten system came crashing down around them. That's the thing about monsters like Lang and Ethan. They think they're untouchable. They think the rules don't apply to them. Until someone like me shows up. An old man, with nothing left to lose, except the truth. And when the truth finally comes out, it doesn't just hurt. It destroys.